Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Graceologie with Gwen Smith podcast. I'm Gwen Smith, and I'm so glad you joined me today. Around here, we have fun, faith-focused, grace-filled conversations, all to help you know and trust God more. Our discussions are honest, often humorous, and always practical, and they're going to encourage you in meaningful ways to live out and lean on the grace of Jesus in the midst of cluttered, messy days. You got any of those? I know I do, and I can't wait to get to today's conversation, which is all about how we can prepare our hearts and our homes for any crisis, big or small. My guest is national speaker, podcast host, and best-selling author Kathi Lipp. My team and I have rushed the production of this episode in light of all that's taking place around the world with COVID-19. Bad stuff happens all the time. Big stuff like hurricanes and wildfires, and smaller scale yet no less devastating disasters like a sudden injury, job loss, or even a computer crash. But today, we face the global pandemic of the coronavirus as well as the related financial fallout, and it's a massive disruption of all of our lives. But that does not mean that we have to live in constant fear. Max Lucado said it well. The presence of anxiety is unavoidable, but the prison of anxiety is optional. Today, Kathi and I have a simple and practical conversation of ways to sift through, organize, and strengthen our minds, hearts, and homes in a season of quarantine, loss, and confusion. Kathi Lipp, it brings me great joy to welcome you back to the Graceologie podcast, girlfriend.
Well, Gwen Smith, it's always great to be here with you. You are one of my favorite podcasters, friend.
Well, that's all because you were my inspiration. So we just have a little love.
So happy.
I know.
Love, love, love.
So much love. Well, you were one of my very first guests when I got started, and I know. So you know what's coming. You know that I always put my guests on a hot seat of sorts. So we're going to have the fast fun favorites round, and I'm just wondering, are you ready?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, here we go, Kathi. Name one of your guilty pleasures.
Oh, peanut M&Ms.
Oh, they're so good. Okay.
They really are.
Early or late?
Early, which is a big change around for me because in kindergarten, I was a late bird, because my mom didn't think she could get me to school but now I get up at 5:30 every morning.
Wow, that is early. All right, Kathi, what song makes you dance every time?
Uptown Funk.
Oh,
I just love that song.
That's a good one.
Yes, it is. It's so good.
It is such a good song to dance. Okay, now I'm kind of dancing. Okay, what is your go-to skincare item?
MAC Cosmetics moisturizer. That's it.
Okay.
Pretty basic.
And what song would you pay money never to hear again? Okay,
I'm going to tell you a slightly funny story. My great uncle, his name was Myron Florin. Some of your more seasoned listeners may remember him from the Lawrence Welk Show, where he played the accordion.
Oh, my goodness.
Right?
Yes.
So, Tiny Bubbles, if I never hear that song again, I will be okay with that.
And for me, it's Christmas Shoes.
Oh, gosh, that's the worst song ever. You're right. I would have bumped mine off. I would rather hear Tiny Bubbles than the Christmas Shoe song. You are correct.
Same, girl. Yeah. Oh, I know. It's just one of those. Okay. We're going to have to move on because otherwise we're going to just gripe. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at sewing, Kathi?
Sewing?
Yeah.
Like as in needle and thread?
Yes.
I'm a 0. My mom is a California award-winning quilter.
Oh, my goodness.
And it skips a generation. I never had to learn. So I am 0.
My mom is an amazing sewer as well. And I can put a button on, but that's kind of the extent of it. Yeah.
I can put a button on, but sewing, like putting 2 pieces of fabric together, never.
Okay. Well, at least you're honest. Okay.
Yes.
Now, in your opinion, Kathi, how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood?
Half a cord. I have no idea. But we spend a lot of time at the Red House chopping wood. So I'm just going to, half a cord seems like a really big amount.
That's perfect. Okay. Kathi, would you rather be locked in an amusement park or a library?
Library, definitely.
And the final question is, in the 80s song, what was Jenny's number?
8675309.
Yeah.
Oh, all day long.
Okay, and here's your bonus. Who sang that song?
Oh, no. I don't know.
I know, it was a one-hit wonder.
Right. But here's the thing. Like 867 was a prefix in the next town over. Oh. Like there was somebody who had that number and who was listening to it ringing all day long. Who was it?
It was Tommy Two-Tone.
Oh, my goodness.
I didn't even know the name when I looked it up. I'm like, oh, my goodness, I would not have gotten that.
Yeah,
there you go.
But I would never forget Jenny's number.
I knew you wouldn't. That's why I asked. All right. Well, that was fun.
Yes. I love those questions.
Before we head into the episode, I just want to do a quick listener shout out to my Graceologie girl, Renee Cast. Renee gave the show a 5-star rating and left a review that says encouragement. Thank you so much for the encouragement you give to me every week. I've been so blessed by your podcast. Thank you. Thank you. Well, Renee, that's a lot of thank yous, and you're super cute, and I'm super thankful to you, actually, for taking the time to give us a 5-star rating and to leave a review for the show. That makes so much of a difference. So huge thank you to you, Renee, and blessings to you, friend. Well, Kathi, for those who might not yet know you, would you go ahead and formally introduce yourself to my Graceologie community once again?
Oh, I would love to. Well, one of the biggest things is I am a Girlfriends in God writer, so I'm very honored to be a part of that.
Yay.
Yes, and a Graceologie return guest. So those are my two big claims to fame right now while I'm on this podcast. But also, I've written about 20 books, 4 of which I probably shouldn't have written, but live and learn, right? But if you've ever heard of me, it's because of either the Husband Project or decluttering. So those, like Clutter Free is the book that I spend a lot of time talking about. We have an amazing Facebook community called Clutter Free Academy, where over 10,000 women and a couple of brave men declutter their lives every single day. And it's just the best place on the internet. So, and it feels very weird. I've been saying all of my life I live in San Jose, California, but we sold our house last week. I live in the El Dorado forest in Northern California, where we run the Red House Writing Retreat, where writers come for 5 days and work on their craft. And it's my favorite thing in the world to do.
I'm going to come out for a sisterhood weekend sometime.
Oh, my goodness. It is just the best place ever. It really is. I can't believe I get to live there.
I can't wait to get there sometime. I know. It's so cool. I love to watch you virtually and showcase all of the fun things that are happening at the Red House and all of the brilliant writing that comes out of it and these mind-blowing opportunities for people to think and get away and be creative. I'm like, someday I'm going to go hang out with Kathi and we're doing it. But
it's a pretty special place.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we all seem to have a little extra time to hang out and be creative at home right now, which is why we're having this conversation. So for my Graceologie community, let me just give you some context. In light of all that's taking place in the world right now, we have rushed to this conversation with my girlfriend, Kathi Lipp, because Kathi actually wrote a book that isn't scheduled to come out until this summer, but it is being brought to market a little quicker in light of the pandemic we have right now with the coronavirus and the circumstance we have with being quarantined in our home. So her book is called Ready for Anything. Can you believe that, y'all? It is just, I'm like, it's just I'm just like, she is just so Hadassah. She is. Okay, for those of you who don't know that is the Hebrew name for Esther. It is so for such a time as this. So the subtitle of Ready for Anything, her new book, is called Preparing Your Heart and Home for Any Crisis, Big or Small. That just gives me chills, Kathi Lipp. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So I decided instead of interviewing you months from now, I said, we need to talk now. And I want to really table this right off the bat because I love your ability to get to practical, to provide, clarity and an order to thoughts. And our Graceologie community, we are all about trusting God, but we're also all about, hashing that out. What does that look like? So first of all, just backdrop because you did not know that we were going to face a pandemic. What's the story? What's the backstory on why you wrote Ready for Anything?
Okay, it's the most ridiculous backstory ever. So I had a very significant birthday, and my husband says, what do you want to do for your birthday? And I wanted to travel to Europe, and then we decided with some commitments we had that wasn't really going to work. So I'm like, I would just love to go to Canada. And so we were in Canada, and we were traveling around. We went to all these different cities and things. But the one thing I didn't check out on any of our Airbnbs was to see if they had laundry facilities.
Oh.
And so I was at a laundromat, and it was 1,000 degrees. It was the hottest Canada had ever been.
In Canada?
In Canada, right? Also, something I didn't know, lots of mosquitoes in Canada.
Oh, no.
Had not realized that. So while I was in the laundromat, and fortunately they had Wi-Fi, I looked up, how can you do laundry without a washing machine? And it took me to a prepper website. And I thought, okay, that's crazy. I don't want to do anything with prepper. I just want to know how to wash clothes without a washing machine and get out of
You're like,
here.
I don't want to be that person.
Right. Because, we all have that uncle who has 10 years of canned beans or something like that.
Yeah.
But you know what? I started to read some of the things that these preppers were talking about. And while they were way more extreme than I ever would be, I realized how completely unprepared I was, not just for a pandemic, which, by the way, I don't talk about a pandemic in my book because who knew?
I know.
But how completely unprepared I was for having to be in my house for 2 weeks or having to get out of my house for a few days if there was a crisis there. And as I started to look at it, I thought, okay, there's the crazy, wacky reaction. And then there's the other reaction of, if something happens to me, I'll just be with Jesus. And I'm thinking there has to be a reasoned response between the two of those.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe that God has ever said, just stop taking your medicine if you trust me.
Yeah.
Or just, don't wear your seatbelt if you trust me. Like, that rings ridiculous to me. But also thinking I have no God to rely on. And so ergo, I must only rely on myself also did not ring true. So I feel like what I've done and this journey I've been on, little did I know I was going to be buying a house in the mountains where, let's just say, we've gotten snowed in a couple of times. We've lost water, and we've taken precautions to get past those things. But we've had to put a lot of this into practicality.
Yeah.
And even with this pandemic, the beautiful thing, Gwen, is we've been able to be the helpers instead of the hoarders. And we've been able to give away the TP. We've been able to give away the Clorox wipes, those things that we had. We didn't have a ton of them, but we knew we had enough to take care of our present needs. And we also trust God that if we need more, then God's going to provide a way one way or another. So we can trust him in all of that.
Yes. I have to ask, what do you mean by TP? Oh, toilet paper.
Paper. Oh, yes.
I'm thinking American Indian housing. I'm like, what?
Oh gosh. No. Toilet paper. Yes. I'm like the stuff that we used to hang up in the trees of our enemies when we were younger. Yes.
That's so funny. Okay. That was West Coast. You say TP and I say TP. Okay. Forget it. East Coast, West Coast. It was lost in translation for a second, but I'm I'm so leaving that in.
That's okay. We met in the middle.
Oh, no. So I love that God even went before us to get this down, because when you read through the chapters of your book, that's exactly where it is. It's not an extremist hunker down and be prepared for the next millennium. It is, listen, there are going to be times in life when we're thrown for a curve. And I started thinking through my past 5 years. And not only have I obviously faced a pandemic, which is what we're going through this, but you and I were good friends when I went through a house fire and wearing the earrings you bought me. And
yes,
happened to be job loss with my husband twice. We've had health scares because Brad was diagnosed with thyroid cancer 5 years ago. I had a vocal cord damage and emergency situations to respond with injuries with our children. At one point, just last year, Preston sustained a concussion while he was in college. I had to go in the middle of the night. Things like that where it's just a matter of, can we think through and make some wise choices ahead of time so that in the event of crises, small and big, we can be ready for anything.
Right. And thinking about this way, what it does is it dampens our panic mode. Yes. You know, if we can say, Gwen, you probably don't know this about me, but my first husband was unemployed quite a bit. And my dad was chronically unemployed when I was growing up. And so that's a real fear trigger for me. So one of the things Roger and I have done, and he knows that this is a fear trigger for me, is we've talked about, you know, I'm self-employed. So that means, you know, great income to little income, you know, so mine is not consistent. But with Roger, you know, how does he come home and tell me that he's lost his job? What are our first steps? So like we've got a 5-minute plan that if Roger loses his job, you know, the first thing we do is pray. He works on our finances to see where we're at with stuff. My next move is to cancel, you know, Netflix and all those things that are optional at this point. So we have kind of a checklist. Yeah. So instead of going into panic, we go into preparedness. And what you're doing is you're just pre-deciding, how am I going to react in this situation? And to even think through it for 5 minutes is going to help you so much more, because we're stupid in an emergency. I tell the story in my book where somebody came and was pounding on our front door yelling, "Fire, fire." And both Roger and I were at home working. And all we did was we grabbed the dog and we went out on our front lawn. We live in townhouses. So the house 2 doors down from us was engulfed in flames. I've never seen anything like it. The house in between us, it was coming over into it. And then there was our house. We didn't do anything smart in that. We didn't grab a leash for the dog. We didn't grab our important dog. We did nothing. And then we're standing out there, and it's the first day of college. And I said, Roger, Jeremy didn't come home without us knowing, right? Because it was his first day of college. And he said, no, we would have heard him. And then Roger goes running back into our house to double check, because like he can't live with himself. 30 seconds later, Roger comes running out of the house, Jeremy behind him. And so we were the family who grabbed the dog and forgot the kid. And it's funny now because everybody's okay. Yeah. But like he came home and fell asleep like only a teenage boy can fall asleep, and didn't hear all this. There's a fire. We need to get outside. Amazing. And so, you know, you think about that, right? And it's like now, like our plan is to check to see if there are any other humans in the house. Yeah. When there's a fire. Yeah. Yeah. It's just those kind of pre-deciding, what are we going to do? What are we going to do if there's an accident? What are we going to do? I was so impressed with my husband. We were in a car accident recently, and I realized I had not really thought through what I need to do in a car accident. And now I have a little note on my phone that says, you know, okay, check in on the insurance app and ask the other driver these questions. But sometimes you don't think of those things until you're in those things. So it's good to take those notes. Yes, it really is. And it can be a form of protection as well as preservation, because I was once hit from behind and hit by a young man who, it was pouring down rain in the middle of rush hour. Is like ultimate, like on a 2-lane. So it was like traffic coming and going. So I was backing up traffic. So he said, he got out and he's like,
pull over. I'll just pull over and we'll talk about it. And I'm like, okay. I pull over and he goes flying past me, literally hitting me. And white truck. That's all I got. Sorry, cops. But it was literally maddening. Had I known better, it was like, I will pull over after I get your license plate, your name, and your driver's license, So but that's, now I know. And now the whole Graceologie community knows, don't pull over until you know everything about them. But that's the kind of thing.
Take a picture of the driver's license, if nothing else.
Yes.
Take a picture of the license, if nothing else.
Car, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, things like that. That's just about being prepared. Hey friends, Gwen here. I want to talk to you about Bible study. Here's what I know for sure. Everything about your relationship with God will grow stronger when you're intentional to get to know Him more intimately by studying His Word. And the thing is, it doesn't take that long to open your Bible up every day and read. When you have a plan and a community to connect with, Bible study becomes more routine and faith becomes more authentic. But you've got to take the time to prioritize studying the Bible so that you can move forward growing in faith and experience the power, perspective, and peace that God provides and that we all want. Your relationship with the Lord grows stronger when you spend regular time in the Word. And I want to show you how to establish a simple and effective process for studying the Bible. I have a free online Bible study that'll show you exactly how to get started. I'm going to walk you through how to study the Bible using an inductive method that can be done in the comfort of your own home and in a time frame that fits with your personal schedule, even if you've never done a Bible study before in your life. Go to gwensmith.net/psalmadventure. That's gwensmith.net/psalmadventure to sign up for my free online Bible study. And I promise you'll walk away with a clear understanding of how to get started with a personal inductive Bible study plan. Don't wait. Everything about your relationship with God will grow stronger when you're intentional to know and trust Him more by studying the Bible. You mentioned, what you talked about with if Roger were to lose his job, you have that in your book. It's like, these are the 3 steps. Yeah. That's the kind of stuff where I find your book so valuable. And I just think it is so wonderful to have thought through specific items. And so that's where I want us to go now. So let's go practical. And for my Graceologie community, I just want you to know that when you read any book by Kathi Lipp, you're going to laugh a lot. She is so hilarious. I mean, she's just fun. And I literally will read and just giggle. It's so funny. I'll just be reading and then I'll giggle and then I'll read and then I'll giggle and then I'll be like, ooh, that's good. Ooh, that's good. So that's kind of what you're prepared for.
That's awesome.
Well, it's kind of who you are, and I love you. So let's talk about, we talked about why it's important to be prepared. Obviously, I think we're all realizing that now more than ever. But
right.
talk about some practical things we can be doing even right now during a time of quarantine. I know that, one of your other main topics that you speak of is clutter. So I want to talk about this combination of planning and clutter. Go.
Yes. So this is my favorite topic by far. And let me tell you why. Because I feel like when we're living in clutter, what we're doing is, as you're starting to get rid of the clutter, you're starting to reclaim your past. Yeah. The clutter is left over from indecision and things that you can't do. And I think people feel like they're stocked up, but if you're cluttery, you don't know what you have. So you may have like 85 cans of marinara sauce, but no pasta to put it on.
That happens all the time.
Right. And so I want you to be prepared at every level. That's my goal for you. So clutter is not knowing what you have. The things you have may be expired or just not useful, not where you'd want them to be. So you don't know where they are. Or like things like you have 8 flashlights, but no batteries for the flashlights.
Right.
And so once you get rid of the clutter, here's the beautiful thing. You can actually see what you have. So I think while people are in this state of quarantine, the first thing I want you to do, and this will help you save money, time, energy, space, is you may not be able to throw things away like you normally would. Until a week ago, I lived in San Jose, California, which is on a complete lockdown. Right. Like, I don't even know if they have trash service at this point. But get rid of anything that you will not eat. And then you can take an inventory of what you actually have. And then if you need to order groceries, if you're still able to do that in your area, or you need to go to the store, or if you're still able to do that in your area, you can get just what you need and leave the rest for the rest of the people who need something. And so it's a way of walking out our Christian faith, but by shopping well. And I also think about it this way. Now is the time to get rid of those puzzles that are missing a few pieces, or those broken pieces of furniture. Even if you just put it on the side of the house or in a place in your garage, as you're decluttering, what you're doing is you're not only lessening your stuff, you are lessening your stress.
Yes.
Because clutter, it raises the bad cortisol levels in women more than it does men. And the more cluttered we are, the more we are stressed out as women. So I want you to get rid of that stuff. And even if you can't dispose of it right now, get it into a place where it is out of your everyday activities so that you're able to function. So I want you to declutter. And then I want you to say, okay, you know what? I've got gauze pads up in the bathroom, and I've got Band-Aids down in the kitchen, and I've got ointment that, wow, it still has a couple months left on it. And I'm going to pull all that together for an emergency kit. Because I'll tell you, yesterday, Gwen, I broke my toe.
Oh, my word.
What do I do? There's not a thing I can do. I'm taping it to the other toe. That's all I can do at this point, because I'm not going to go to a doctor for this. No. Because there are real crises going on. But I'm so glad I had that tape to tape that little piggy toe to where it needed to be. And so to think about it like that, to create space in your home where you know what you have, you know what your canned foods are, you know what pasta you have, you know what rice you have, you know what canned meats you have, and you can start to get creative. And when you do that, here's what you're doing. You're working with purpose and not panic. And that's what I want for each of the Graceologie listeners.
I am writing notes so fast. So just as a review for those of you who are listening, if you're busy doing something, we got some notes here. So during our time of quarantine, or any time when we actually can be intentional to plan ahead and to unclutter, we, first of all, Kathi says, get rid of what you won't eat in terms of food pantry. This is huge because there are a lot of things. As soon as you said that, there are things in my pantry that I won't eat and that no one will, but someone, maybe Aunt Martha gave it to me,
Right.
So get rid of what you won't eat. Second thing is to take an inventory of what you have. So figure out what you do have. Third thing is to make a list of what you need so that you can shop and plan accordingly as a good steward. And then Kathi said, pull together and create an emergency kit, create spaces of order. And here's the thing that I really hear is, while we are at home, while we have time that is disposable at this point, it's to be intentional. What if during this 2-week stint, or whatever the time being, what if you and I and everyone in our Graceologie community decided, I'm going to do daily 20-minute tidies, or whatever amount of time we allow ourselves. I'm going to do a 20-minute tidy. I'm going to do a 2-hour tidy. I'm going to do a pantry tidy today. Then the next day, I'm going to do a tidy of my closet. What if we were intentional to utilize this time to bring order? Because, to our homes, to our hearts, obviously the first order of business in all of this is to pray. It's to pray and actually spend the time with Jesus. But after that, there is the practical. And I love what you said, that uncluttering not only decreases your stuff, it decreases your stress. Hello, is there anyone in this Graceologie community who is interested in decreasing some stress?
Yeah, it just makes all the difference in the world when you're pinging on everything in your house. Like you can't walk through a room and you're like, oh, I need to pay that bill. Oh, I need to put that away. Oh, I need to wash that, whatever it is. What it's doing, it's pinging you and it's bringing up your anxiety level. So I would love for you to get some of that stuff out of your house, even if it's on the side of your house right now. And I even talk about separate your trash from your garbage. Your garbage is that smelly stuff that you need to be taken away. So if you still have garbage removal, you can put that in there. But if you're decluttering, you're creating more things that are being thrown away. There's some of this stuff that you'll be able to just put on the side of your house until you can go to the dump or do what you need to do. So separate that out.
Things
right,
like that.
Exactly.
That's terrific. Okay, so I know that you give some tips on how to safeguard your digital valuables too. Mm-hmm. So
yes.
Listen, in the past month and a half, both Brad and myself, we have both had external hard drives that went awry. And we both, now I've backed up a lot more digitally than Brad has. Mm-hmm. I'm not bragging. It was just the situation. But we both were like devastated. And Brad literally lost almost all his files. So talk about even organization digitally that we could be doing during this time when we actually can gather our thoughts and bring order to our lives.
Right. So a couple of things that will two things that will make your life so much easier. So make sure you have an automatic backup. We use Dropbox. That really works for us. And it just, anything that you can back up where you don't have to think about it. So I would say Dropbox is the way I would go. The other thing I would say is have a password manager. I know that there are some people who use, I think it's called 1Password. We actually use Dashlane. And so you just need to know one password to get to all of your passwords. And it just makes your life 1,000 times less crazy. And if you're sharing passwords with family members or work, other people at work, it is a brilliant way to do it.
So do you use that on an app? What does that look like? So if you use Dashlane, for example, which is what you're saying you use, is that? Yeah. And do you not feel like that's a security risk?
No, I don't. Here's my goal, my thing. If Roger trusts it, I trust it. Yeah. And he knows about encryption and all that kind of stuff. It is way more secure than me having a million strips of paper or Post-it notes or even a document on my computer. Yeah. It's way more secure than that ever would be. So it's an app for your phone that also ties into your computer. So I just sign in with my secret code. And then I say, what website do I want to go to that has a password? And I just click on it and it automatically signs me in. It's beautiful.
Nice. Well, for those of you who are listening and not able to write that down, you can rest assured that we're going to have notes from the show and links to all of this over at gwensmith.net/Graceologie. Find my episode with Kathi Lipp and we will hook you up. So those are terrific in terms of just basic digital protection. And that's something that actually we could all be doing, backing up files, even cleaning our desktop, which I really strongly need to do. But also,
we all do.
Oh, I know. I'm telling you, it just is a never-ending pile of digital for me. But there are a lot of ways we can, as parents, some of us, like for me, I have 6 adults in my house right now. I've got 4 college students. Brad and I know so much for empty nest. We're laughing. We're like, well, okay. But it is a unique times. But there's a lot of my listeners that have younger kids. They have kids in high school. They have kids in middle school, elementary school, all the things. So what are some of the ways that we can be prepared as parents? Or like I have got friends who are elementary school teachers. Like there's so many ways we're influencers and teachers. So how can we be prepared with other practical things?
Yeah. So for your kids, I want you to think through what is their routine and how can you help support them. And so this is, right now we're in kind of a unique time and people keep asking, how do I keep my kids entertained? How do I keep my kids entertained? I don't think you should be entertaining your kids. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but this is such a great time for them to be doing things like learning to cook meals, learning to create shopping lists, learning to do things around the house. And I'm not just saying chores, which I think chores are great, don't get me wrong, but can they be learning things like, how to repair things? Let's give them opportunities to learn life skills. This is a great time as you're decluttering. Could you be putting together a little toolbox for your daughter or your son if you have extra tools that eventually they'll need when they move out of the house? But let's empower our kids. Gwen, I'll never forget this. My daughter went off to college, and I said, so what have you learned, not in college, but living with other people? This is what I wanted to know. And she said, the first thing I've learned, Mom, is everybody has terrible taste in music except for me. Like, well, that might be slightly subjective, but okay. And she said, the other thing I learned is nobody knows how to take care of themselves. I'm like, well, tell me about that. And she said, nobody here knows how to do their own laundry. And I thought, you've got to be kidding. And so, and this was probably, let me see. So that was probably 7 years ago that she went off to college as a freshman. But to say that none of these kids knew how to take care of their own needs. And so I want to raise strong, capable kids, because here's what I believe that does. When they're not just sitting on the sidelines and we're throwing games at them and saying, be entertained, while we're over in the other part of the room being worried and stressed out, it's only causing anxiety for them. And here's the thing. If you are stressed out and anxious, please do not hear this as judgment. Please, please, please. I get it. I was talking to my mom. I'm like, Mom, when was the last time our country felt like this? And my mom is, mid 70s. And she says, never. It's never been like this.
Yeah.
This is unique. And so if you are stressed out, I get it. But I also know when we can put purpose instead of panic, it's amazing. I don't want to just tell people to calm down. That's the worst thing you could tell people. But to get proactive and involve your kids, involve your grandkids, involve your niece and your nephew, and let them feel empowered to do some of the things that they're ready to do. We underestimate our kids so much of the time. But to say, hey, you guys are responsible for, you lunch Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays, and you lunch Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. So let's figure it out. Let's figure out what we have. Let's work backwards. It's an amazing gift we can give our kids.
I like that. I like that. I'm like, okay, I can get everyone going with, okay, you're on for dessert tonight.
You have 6 adults in your house. You should be doing a 6 of the cooking, unless you want to do more. Right. Unless you want to do
No, light bulbs just went off, girl. I promise you. Thank you, Jesus.
Yes.
I love it.
Right?
Oh, my goodness.
This should not be a burden to anybody. This should be dividing your work if people have to. If people are living with you. So get that schedule going, my friend.
Totally. I love that. Okay. So I know that another thing that you talk about in the book is being somebody else's solution. And if ever there's a time when we can do that, now's when we can be intentional. So what are your ideas for that?
Well, I'll just say my ideas are a little different than they were a couple of weeks ago because of the social isolation and things like that. So I think that if you're preparing food and you're doing it in a very clean way, could you take food over to a neighbor, especially an elderly neighbor or maybe somebody who has a bunch of kids, and just, text them, hey, I'm leaving this on your doorstep. And so far, except for in Santa Clara County, I don't know of any place that you can't do that. And even in Santa Clara County, I bet you could leave it on the next door neighbor's porch. But, so things are changing all the time. But also to say, hey, I have more toilet paper than I can see that I'm going to need in the foreseeable future. Who needs this? And to say, one of the things that we're doing this for our kids who seem to be doing okay, but also, one of them works retail and in a grocery store, and, that's a challenge all of its own. Yeah. My son is having to go into work because he works on encrypted things that he can't take that home. And so we're sending DoorDash gift certificates right now just to say, how can we be a blessing to these guys? And so we're just trying to figure it out day by day, what we're doing, but trying to think outwardly, because as soon as you stop thinking about other people, you'll start being worried about yourself.
Yes.
And there's no reason to do that.
Yeah.
We can do this.
And biblically, the heart of what Jesus said is the most important thing for us, and this is in crisis and times of calm, is that we love the Lord our God with all our heart, mind, and soul, and love others as ourselves. And so there is that component to, if we only look inward. I mean, Corrie ten Boom said it, if you look to the world, you'll be distressed. If you look inside, you'll be...
I don't know that
distressed. I'm going to come up with that and then put it on. But if you look to God, you'll be at rest. It's like there is this, when we look just inside or just look at the world, we're always going to be tangled in a million knots. But when we look to the Lord, we're going to find clarity and the rest that our souls long for. But there is that component, what Jesus said, it's really important that you love God. It's really important that we are taking our time to get with Him, to calm our hearts before Him, to bring Him our burdens that are very real, and to surrender even our fears and our anxieties and the stress of just all of the shifts and the unknowns, and allow Him to be yoked to those burdens, to lift those from us, but then to think beyond ourselves. So I'm, trying to purposefully speak life to others and support them in ways that are very practical. And I love just that whole challenge to think beyond yourself, to be somebody else's solution.
Yeah. And just look to, everybody has an abundance of something. It may not be money. It may be time or energy. Maybe you're super healthy and you can help a neighbor who isn't able to do what they need to do. And if you're not in a forced lockdown right now, could you go mow their lawn? Or could you take out their garbage cans? There are a million things, little things that are insurmountable to some people where they're just easy for you. And so it's just a matter of thinking outside of ourselves. And I don't mean that we've always been selfish and now it's time to look to others. No, it's just we have to think in a very different way now because we've never experienced something like this. So we just have to have that new mind of Christ. How can I serve in a way I've never experienced before?
Yeah, I think that's powerful. So Kathi, are there any other final thoughts that you have in terms of just this whole concept of being prepared for anything and utilizing our time right now strategically in our lives to work with purpose and not panic, but to be intentional, to unclutter, and any other broad spectrum thoughts or anything that's like kind of burning a hole in your heart?
Yeah. So I would just say, think about how, because this will not be our last crisis. I hate to say that, but it won't be our last crisis. So think about, how can I be prepared for the next thing that's coming, not out of panic, but just out of a sound mind and wisdom. And then also think, how can I prepare those I love? So do you need to get some water jugs for your family who's in earthquake country? What is it that you need to do to prepare yourself and those you love? Again, not out of a sense of panic, but just to say, how can I have an abundance so that I'm able to help the people that God has put directly in my path? That's how I want to react to this crisis.
That's beautiful. I would love to challenge each of you Graceologie girls to hit me with a DM on Instagram and let me know just some practical ways that you are establishing order in your home, putting plans in action of preparation for the next crisis, or maybe even just some things that you are doing to prepare those who you love. I would love to hear your practical efforts right now, and maybe even some that are influenced by this conversation with my girlfriend Kathi Lipp, so that we can share those with the greater Graceologie community and learn from each other. So find me on Instagram. I'm at Gwen Smith Music, and the show is at Graceologie. But Kathi, I'll make sure that I tag you in those when I repost them. And
yes.
Yeah. So so I am so grateful for you, for the ways that you have added to the body of Christ by bringing order and just clarity in a lot of ways, whether it be through marriages or spatial stuff or heart stuff. There's so many ways that God is using you. But I would love for you right now to just take us all before the Lord in prayer.
Oh, I'd love to. It's an honor. Father, I pray for each person who is listening here. God, I pray that where there is fear you will replace it with your pure presence. And where there is panic, that you will replace it with a community of believers to love on each other. God, we want to be our best for you, and we want to be infused with your Holy Spirit to help in a way that we've never been called on to help before. And God, we pray that you would give us an extra measure of wisdom through these days. And God, I pray that so many people would see your face because of your body of believers. We are so grateful to be a part of your plan. And it's in Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. You can pre-order Kathy's book right now, and they're going to have a digital copy coming out soon, but it's called Ready for Anything, Preparing Your Heart and Home for Crisis, Big or Small. Kathi Lipp, it has been awesome to have you on again. I love you. Where is the best place online for my Graceologie community to connect with you?
Well, if you want to get rid of clutter and also be prepared, because we're going to be talking a lot about that in there, go to Facebook and go to Clutter Free Academy and ask to join. And when it asks you the questions of why you want to join, just say Kathi told me to, and that's your fast pass to get into that group.
I love it.
But it's a free group. It's the kindest place on the internet, and we're going to be working on getting prepared together.
I love it. Well, we will make sure that all of the links to that Facebook page and everything else that was referenced in this conversation is on the show notes, so you guys can find that at gwensmith.net/Graceologie. Find this episode with Kathi Lipp, and we will hook you up. Kathi, once again, love you, girl. So grateful for you joining me on the show again. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing your Graceologie girls with me.
Absolutely. It's incredible how our conversations have changed lately, right? Well, be sure to visit Kathi online and connect with her on social media as well. Today's show was edited by Chad Shuping, and the music is by premiumbeat.com. If you have any questions, comments, or topic suggestions, I love hearing from you. Send me a message or a speaking inquiry right from my website at gwensmith.net. All of the links and the show notes from today's episode can be found at gwensmith.net/Graceologie. That's gwensmith.net/Graceologie. Thank you so much for joining me today. I will be back soon with another episode, but until then, if you haven't already subscribed, please open up your podcast app and click that subscribe button. Subscriptions, ratings, and reviews on iTunes or whatever podcast app you listen to really make a big difference to all of us who are working really hard to bring you these shows. Plus, they ensure that you will not miss a thing. And be sure to connect with me on social media. I'm at Gwen Smith Music on every platform, and I hang out a ton on Instagram. And the show is at Graceologie with an IE on every platform. Now get out there and have a beautiful, grace-filled day.